Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Shadow and Act Live. My name is Trey Mangum. I'm an editor with Shadow and Act. Thank you for joining us. Today we have actor, director, producer, activist Jesse Williams, who is here today to chat with us about his new film, Random Acts of Violence, which will be out on Shudder on August 20th. Welcome, Jesse, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Trey. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah, you froze briefly, but I got you.
Thank you. So thank you for joining us today. First off, how are you and how have you been holding up during quarantine and the pandemic since all of this started?
I'm great. But I'm getting better. Things are, all things considered, it's fine. We're trucking along, and full of gratitude to be able to keep, healthy and safe and productive. Definitely being productive. Sometimes it's up and down, but everything is well. I'm excited.
Yeah. Now, I want to make sure that our viewers know a bit more background about Random Acts of Violence. It is a slasher horror film that first premiered at the 2019 Fantastic Fest. And for those who are unfamiliar with that, it's an Austin, Texas-based festival which focuses on genre films. And the film is directed by Jay Baruchel, and he also stars in the film with Jordana Brewster and Neve Wilson. The film revolves around a comic book creator whose work becomes the inspiration for several real-life murders that continue to happen as the course of the film goes on. And the review from Digital Spy calls the film the most goriest of the year, and I can attest to that. So, Jesse, how did you get involved with this project?
Well, thank you. I got involved through Jay. They reached out. I've been a fan of Jay Baruchel. Just as a person, like as an actor, he's been compelling. He's made me laugh. He's a real person. He's kind of the character that I've often attached to when I've seen his work. And we got on the phone or a video chat of some kind, and I just bought into his vision. I wanted to work with him. He was passionate. He was trying to say something and play with getting inside of the box and being meta, but then getting inside of the other box and making a commentary about the outer world, the genre, and society as a whole. And I was with that. It was a hell of a ride. It was really great to watch him, watch his baby evolve, and his commitment to both the mission, but also to fun and levity in the process was really awesome to watch. So I was buying into, sometimes you buy into the story, or you buy in as an actor, buy into the story or the character you just want to play, kind of regardless of the movie. While both of those were at play for me, I bought into the person that I wanted to work with and produce with.
And a huge theme in this movie is art influencing real life. And we see this as our characters have different viewpoints on whether they think this is the case. Do you think that art influences real life events? And back last fall, there was a bit of uproar when Joker first came out because people thought about the timing of it and like the plot of it. How do you feel about that personally? Do you think that what we see on screen impacts how we view real life things?
Everything influences everything. It's a circle. It's a cycle. We can't help but be influenced. What would we be if we're not absorbing? You're influenced by a remark your mom made 17 years ago, and you're influenced by a cartoon you saw, and exposure helps usher along further creativity. A lot of times we don't even realize that we're actually influenced by something, and we think it might be a totally original idea that we just came up with, but actually it's formed and shaped by a line from Seinfeld 20 years ago. It's that's part of it. I think it's silly for us, if not futile, to pretend that these things aren't interconnected. So sure. And does sometimes that brings with it a responsibility, or at least certainly an awareness, acknowledgement that some things can be the result. Art certainly is a reflection of what's happening in society. It can also inspire what's going to happen in society. It can be both. Sometimes it can feel like it's neither. So what Todd Walkley, the central character in the film, is dealing with is he's feels like he's created something whole and original, and starts realizing that it's got a greater influence on events than he expected. And then beyond that, is it whole and original, or is it actually a byproduct of something else? Which is a lot like I think a lot of things in the creative process. We're in an election year in the U.S., and you're seeing, certainly politicians try to go with the ebb and flow of what society wants or what their constituents want, or at least they present themselves as if they do. And other times they're, in many ways, on the right, they're dictating what society's supposed to care about. So it's all intertwined.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of brings to light the interesting discussion that we have about representation on screen. Because of course, when we're dealing with fictional characters in television and movie stuff, we want to see how that is in real life portrayed on screen, how that, how it kind of works hand in hand. Like, that's why, movies need to be diverse, because our actual, real life looks diverse. And I think that this has like an interesting, correlation to a lot of things that go on in this movie. Even though like this is a cult horror film, it kind of plays into a lot of how we perceive things on screen.
Interesting. I certainly did appreciate that while so much of my work, entirely creative or political in nature, certainly includes, if not centers around race and public health. This is I don't know that I've ever seen a central character of a film, a Black graphic novelist, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just a Black comic guy, a creative. It's not on its face about race in any particular way.
Yeah.
And the reality has been that's not, those opportunities haven't presented themselves to actors of color, where they're not there as a device through which to explore race, or just be a side friend to demonstrate some gesticular Blackness or some shit. So it's that certainly had an appeal. Like, oh, he's just an actual fully formed human being that's just pursuing his creative interests. It doesn't have to be banging the drum of race on these few days of his life.
Yeah. And this is actually your second horror/thriller film, in the recent years. There was also Jacob's Ladder, released last year. And I want to know if there were any similarities or differences between these two projects, and is horror a genre that we can see you doing more of going forward?
It's interesting, because actually maybe my third film, second film, I think, third film was Cabin in the Woods. My first leading role in a film was a studio film. It was Cabin in the Woods, an epic kind of cult sensation, horror meta, Joss Whedon, Drew Goddard film. And these are, it's interesting. I've asked myself, why do I keep returning to that well? I think that it stands out to so much of my work is centered on real life, pragmatic, results-based. I think something that appeals to me is an exploration into something in a different dimension, something that doesn't have to play by the rules of white supremacy and domestic, just like anthropological restrictions. So there's something that appeals to me about that there, and also what we're scared of. There's something about fear that I think is thrilling to explore. So whether it's Cabin in the Woods, which is loaded with comedy and commentary, each of these things have a societal connection, or intended to both give you an escape, but also to make you think about how it can reflect on the society that you live in and how you live your life as an individual. So there is a connective thread, I think.
Yeah. So we're still going through the COVID-19 pandemic, and television series are slowly going back into production, with these safety protocols in place. And with Grey's Anatomy being a medical drama, do you think shows like Grey's, other procedurals should write in the pandemic, or do you think it shouldn't acknowledge that? How would you see these type of shows address that?
Oh, I expect them to address it. It's not easy to write anything. It's certainly not easy to write narrative and write it this many times a year for this many years on a show like Grey's. So if somebody hands you some more story opportunity, some more world events to give you opportunity for character arcs and development and conflict and problem solving, uh, take advantage if it's interesting, not just because it's there, but if you can actually use it to further story and character development. And I'd be really surprised if our show or any other show in the field of medicine doesn't take a crack at exploring this pandemic. I expect Grey's will, and they are trying to go back into production.
Do you think that this pandemic is an opportunity to change some of the outdated Hollywood systems for the better, or do you think things will continue to get worse before it gets better for people who are marginalized in the industry?
No, it's an opportunity. It's not necessarily the pandemic. I think 2020,
Yeah, it's just
man, is
multiple things.
yeah, it's just this spiral, this typhoon, this collision of cultural realities and exhaustion. And I think a lot of us are finding our way towards alignment, towards centering ourselves or stripping away the fat and the unnecessary excess in our lives that don't really serve us, and focusing on, what do I want? How do I, or, what do I want my life to be surrounded by? And I think that also results in, segments of society that have had enough, that are standing up for themselves and realize that we can't let this stand anymore. Let's be more aggressive about being ourselves in public and be able to do that in a free way. So that's both, legislative, but it's also creative. And Hollywood is definitely changing. And there's going to be a combination of like white guilt, liberal guilt, a trend, trying to be on the right side of history, and then also well-meaning individuals that, we don't need 7 white leads in every single one of our shows. We don't need 4 guys and a girl as the format for every way we do a show or a movie. We maybe want women to write women. These kind of very novel, very basic, obvious ideas that it's really not about giving anybody anything. It's about stop being so damn exclusionary for non-straight white men. So it's a beautiful thing, and sometimes you don't really care how we got there. I just hope that we get there. So I'm totally optimistic. As hard as this year is, it's hard, and it's been much harder for I'm in a huge position of privilege this year, but I'm very optimistic about it. We're available, we're ready for a lot of growth, and the younger generations are being very helpful with that.
Yeah. And kind of going off of that, it's been just a little bit over 4 years since your powerful speech at the BET Awards, when you received the humanitarian award discussing, violence against Black people, police brutality. And I feel like it was such a huge moment. Like, that was a public statement where, you acknowledged that Black women are typically at the forefront of most of these social movements and don't really get the acknowledgement. And then there was the highlighting of victims that we hadn't really heard of in mainstream press at the time, like Rakia Boyd and I think Dorian Hunt, that we really didn't know about. And the phrase, just because we're magic doesn't mean we're not real. People have been, even during the pandemic and everything that's going on. Like, I think Shade Room may have reposted your speech like a few weeks ago. How does it feel 4 years later that we really haven't like change has been kind of marginal? And even thinking about the pandemic, I feel like it kind of took the pandemic to even wake up some people to like realize, hey, this isn't right. And the fact that we were literally saying this, 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing surprising about it. People get on the train where they're at, and this will go as slow or as fast as the people demand. There is no civilization in history that has got respect that hasn't demanded it. People have to learn one way or another that you can't just sit at the knee of any oppressive structure, particularly this delusional white supremacist structure, and hope that you'll get some crumbs that are going to fall off the table, and that you can build a meal from that. You're going to have to climb up and take it, or destroy it and rebuild it, and you can do that in a number of ways. So before you build a house, you need to assemble your supplies. So you can't just start tearing. I mean, you can, but a more productive way to do it is to make sure you get acknowledgement first, and kind of myth bust. I think part of that moment, which was not premeditated, really, it just happened. And in terms of the remarks that I made in 2016, just go directly at it. We do a lot of tiptoeing around white supremacist structure and dialogue and aggression in our workplace, in our homes, across the Thanksgiving table, out at a party. We tiptoe, and it's kind of similar now that I'm talking to you about it, that celebrities, the wealthy, so a lot of celebrities that are wealthy get a lot of stuff for free. When they don't need it, they can afford it, whereas it's incredibly expensive to be poor. White power, which has literally everything at its disposal, gets tiptoed around, while the oppressed are constantly getting kicked in the face. So we are our energy is displaced, and that's because of a lot of conditioning and fear, and I just don't have that.
Yeah, that makes me think about. I think I saw an article on either Twitter, Instagram, one this morning about the DNC happening now, and it was discussing about right now, because it's not held in like a big arena and all the donors aren't in one place, that basically people aren't being bought right now. Like, they aren't being bought with like liquor, they are being bought with food and all sorts of other things. And I just think about how many times that funding like that to just for to help a person reach a certain goal is kind of like wasted money. And then we have so many marginalized people who are literally out here suffering, and then we just kind of like throw money for things that the politicians say that really means a lot. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely a stripping down without big live events and the spectacle and the pumped in sound and music and confetti. Even basketball, when there's no home team and momentum for the home team, and these things that all color and affect the experience and the result, you're stripped down to the bare bones to really see what people are about, what you really have to say. How good is your performance if you don't have pyrotechnics, if you don't have a lot of distractions? So I think that bleeds
I also
over into
want
politics.
to remind. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I also want to remind our viewers who are watching to ask questions for Jesse in the comments. This next question is actually one that someone asked us on Instagram. The question was about
Trey, I lost you on the question was about.
I am back. And sorry for the technical difficulties. We're back here at Shadow Neck Live talking with Jesse Williams about his film, Random Acts of Violence, as well as a few other topics. And this is a reminder that you can ask questions to Jesse in the comments below, and we'll be sure to answer them. This question actually came from someone on Instagram who wants to know about Power. You had a notable guest role in the last season of Power. And from what I can recall off the top of my head, there are 4 spinoffs in the works. I think one premieres in a few weeks. Should we expect to see you in the Power universe anymore? or would you
I
like to
don't
return to it?
know. I don't. I mean, I'd love to. I love Courtney Kemp, the creator. I had a lot of fun flying in for the day to make an appearance. Amari and that crew, Notori. I love a lot of those guys that are on the show.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of kind of scheduling and yeah, they're what a incredible franchise. They've really created something that is really impactful, and I'm really excited for what they have in store. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It'd be dope though. It'd be dope. I love those folks, and Courtney's great.
Yeah. What type of advice do you have for Black creators, whether, actor, director, producer, who are trying to develop their craft during this pandemic?
My first thought in terms of advice for folks is try. Go ahead and make things. Make things with the people around you. Don't wait to be discovered. Don't wait to, you want to pass off everybody. You want to ascend. You want to pass things off to folks and hope somebody chooses to help you along, certainly to pull you forward. But you probably have a couple people around you that you can just, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Don't wait until you have the perfect scenario to try to shoot that short or to try to shoot that scene. Or if you have an idea that is incomplete and you can't quite round it out, maybe just shoot that idea. Maybe just shoot that diner scene you have. You don't know where it goes. You don't know where it came from. Just shoot that scene. Shoot it on an iPhone and play with it. And then you'll get an understanding of how you feel about camera and sound and dialogue and perspective and experience. Gives you is invaluable. Also use the fact that we have more access than we've ever had to tutorials, to any technical thing you want to learn, as well as people's creative process. Go back and look at where folks started. If you want to know how to be Issa, go look at Awkward Black Girl and and look at how that people, you just got to shoot stuff and put it up for free, essentially. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because you will learn, you'll get better.
Yeah. We kind of touched on this a little bit before, but what are some long-term impacts that you think that this, not just a pandemic, this whole situation that 2020 has bestowed upon us, what do you think some long-term impacts will be on the industry?
Some long-term impacts on the media storytelling industry culturally is there are less excuses to keep otherwise marginalized people from telling their story themselves. It being about people of color is not the same as being from or for people of color. It is you are able to explore characters that are trans and cis women and LGBTQ and in other ways, and that it doesn't have to just be one that represents all. So opportunity, growing pains, all these things are the amount of obstacles and excuses, I should say, that have been put before us are going to lessen. They're going to continue to lessen. It's not that we as communities are getting better or progressing or becoming or growing in some way. It's that the excuses are running out. Is that people are being less trash about kind of bullshit ways to exclude us or not factor us in, and pretending that it's a meritocracy when it's a race and sexual orientation nepotistic nest, really. But I feel completely optimistic that I think folks will also just streamline what they're interested in and what they want, how they want to live, simplify your life. And are you doing it for love, or are you doing it for something else? It's tough in hyper capitalism because money drives so much, but in terms of like your journey, your soul, what actually moves you, what actually makes you feel like you're living a life of meaning that you can be proud of and you will be proud of forever. I think more and more of us will be putting love first, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. We have a question from a viewer who said, do you work with individuals who are trying to launch efforts or tackle issues within the industry?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got like 20 different jobs and projects and interests, and yeah, there are plenty of my closest friends and coworkers are in the industry. So absolutely.
Yeah. And one last question that I have, because we're, closing in on Emmy season and, as time goes on, award season in general. And, we're getting better as far as representation, but there's still a lot of, Black actors, Black talent, Black projects that still seem to, get thrown by the wayside, not really acknowledged in this, this structure that we have in Hollywood. What are some ways that you think that we can, give a claim to our Black projects and these diverse projects that star people of color without seeking so much validation within this award system?
Well, two things. One, stop seeking validation from white power structures.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop it. That's not do you go to the NAACP Image Awards?
Yeah.
Do you support when our own people are acknowledging us? Mm-hmm. That should probably be the biggest one for you. Now, I can say that culturally and I can say that earnestly, but we also understand that this is an ecosystem, an economic mm-hmm. system, and Emmys and the majority awards, Golden Globes, Oscars, obviously Grammys, these all dictate your future checks, your future accounts, your commercial holdings, and all these things. So we have to be realistic in that. It's not entirely a endeavor of like white worshiping. It's also trying to position your family and yourself to be mm-hmm. able to mm-hmm. move forward and be able to provide in a better way. So understanding both of those things, I think you need to, I don't sweat their award system. I don't. You want it to be fair. And we're going to disagree. People get ripped off for, it's all subjective. I've seen white actors that should absolutely have been nominated and won, and they lose to some work that I think was not as great as that, but it's mm-hmm. subjective. It's really hard to be right in that case. But I would not spend my energy or be distracted by, use hours in my day or week, frustrated that white people didn't value me. Do you value you? Do you really value you? And is there a way that, are we enough? Is our acknowledgement enough? And figuring out ways to do that. As I said, I understand the impact of both, but you can't make it primary. You can't make white adulations the center of your anything. It is a recipe for disaster.
Yes, totally agree. Well, thank you for joining us today. As a reminder for everyone, Random Acts of Violence is on Shudder this week. Be sure to check it out. It's a streaming service. Has a lot of horror films, cult films. Horror Noir, directed by Tanner Abdu, is also on there. So yeah, check it out and check out Random Acts of Violence. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, everyone. Peace, Trey.